Evening and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports. It is Wednesday night, and tonight is the last chance really that I have to go live, and we can chat about this weekend, stuff like that at this stage, because next time we'll be live is either covering a specific game or else for the match itself. So I thought, we try and do when we can, we try to do a sort of daily news show and just talk about what's happening in and around the rugby world and kind of keep you informed. But to be honest, there's not a lot of news going in and around other than what we're seeing on the field at the moment. There's a couple of small things. We've seen, I think Munster released their away kit today, which not a lot of people have liked, for example. I know that Connacht released their home kit last weekend, but there's not a lot of rugby news happening at the moment, bar the British and Irish Lions versus Springboks series. So that's kind of what we usually try and do. We try to usually sort of talk about the latest rugby headlines and what's happening. But I'll tell you something that we can talk about is the fact that ahead of the first Ladies World Cup match this weekend, 3 Australians have actually been booted from the squad for breaching team protocols, where they basically had a bit of a piss-up over the, I think it was last night, basically, where they had dinner, and then they carried on drinking and were very merry, and as a result have been dropped for this weekend. So we haven't seen any of the teams being announced for this weekend for Australia or New Zealand, but there will be no, although that trio, we'll talk about them a bit later, will not be available at the moment. We've also, interestingly, I don't know if anybody saw the Sevens teams, quite a lot of controversy about the Australia Sevens team, who apparently got pretty pissed on the flight home and were quite rowdy and stuff like that. So there's also stuff happening there, which is quite interesting. But yeah, so let's start getting into the comments, stuff like that, and let me know who's watching, where you're watching from, what your thoughts are for the weekend ahead, what your sort of takeaways, what are sort of big matchups you're looking forward to, and stuff like that, and just how is the series going to finish? You know, we've got a final is the only way to describe it. We've got a final this weekend. So who's taking it, and what can we sort of expect in the match on Saturday? So we'll start. I'm trying to think of where the best places to start. We're going to talk about the match a lot. So we can start with the Australian incident. And before I go into that, let's sort of see who's in the comments. So FF earlier before I went live said, a series marred by off-field shenanigans, hardly a great series to be proud of winning at this rate. We should have kept the off-field cuck away from it. Being on the field, we enjoy more. To be honest, I'm actually on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. I think that the series has been very much, I wouldn't say it's better, but I think it's that the intensity and what's at stake has definitely been increased, I think, in many ways. Because of the off-field stuff, I think there's so much more at stake. There's created so much more tension. There's created more sort of drama and stuff like that. So I think that it's been quite fun in that regard, and that we've really sort of seen a lot of off-field stuff, which has created a lot of pressure. After the video last week and stuff like that, we needed to then come back. We need to on Saturday then back that performance up. You can't just put a video out like that and then sort of flop off on the field. And so I think it was quite a nice sort of extra element to it. So I definitely wouldn't say it's another series you'd be proud of. In 25 years' time, you can look back and say the Springboks did the World Cup and won the Lions series. In those sort of things, you can even sort of talk about, oh, remember that series when this coach did that. But at the end of the day, winning a Lions tour is winning a Lions tour. It doesn't matter what off-field issues or situations there are. You cannot take away from the fact that winning this game this weekend would be a massive, massive feat by the Springboks or the Lions, whichever way it goes. And the Ultimate Sharpshooter says the series is already marred with off-field shenanigans when COVID hit the Bok camp and the lack of training. Just be thankful we've completed three test match level games. Exactly. I think that's the main thing. We didn't even know if we were going to have this series. We didn't know if it was going to happen, where it was going to happen, if it was going to happen, what the sort of story was going to be. I think there's been so much that could have gone wrong with the series that it's almost been weird that after all the sort of the COVID issues and stuff like that, what we've spoken about the most has been, this whole thing about the referees and stuff, and the fact that Carl Sinclair was cited and then not banned. Stuart Hogg wasn't cited. People are saying, why wasn't Faf de Klerk cited? Why wasn't Mario Toje cited and stuff like that? But as Sharpshooter said, I think he sort of hit the nail on the head. The fact that we managed to get 3 tests in, for me, is probably the biggest thing and the most important thing, because I think a year ago we were quite confident, and yet about 3 or 4 months ago we were starting to get quite nervous, and we got very, very nervous when you think that they arrived here in the middle of the third wave. And we saw the Bulls game being called off, and we thought, oh, well, that's it. Pack up the tour. We're not going to be able to get a tour in. And yet we still managed to get, the Stormers game in. We got the SAA game, and we're getting all 3 tests in. So generally, I think it's been mostly quite a successful tour. I think it's especially given the situation, it's been a really, really tough tour to pull off, and they have pulled it off. Good evening, F and TSG. Good evening, Cheslin. Sculler is going Aki versus Damien as a matchup he's looking forward to. FF reckons you can expect a red card. F and TSG is going Bokker winning 21 points to 12. Yeah, we're going to do some score predictions a bit later. Liam Williams to nullify him. Nullify who? I'm assuming, who's nullifying it. Koss says, good evening, Kwasi. Good evening, Tian for the Berg. Container says, watching from Hardy Sport, imagine a very bulky loose forward in the future. 6 Khaleesi, 7 Vermeulen, 8 Visa. I'll be surprised if we saw that, I must admit. I mean, I think that the PCF Toy, I don't think is up for too long, hopefully. We need a Northern Hemisphere versus Southern Hemisphere series. I don't think we can put the Australians, the Africans, and the New Zealanders into a room long enough to ever be able to agree on something. The Ultra Sharpshooter says, before the SAA test, I was really on the edge of not being interested in the test series because of all the COVID case, but after that match, I've been so invested in it. I think the empty stadiums has damped the excitement surrounding the series as well. Quick question: will you be doing a video with Skinny Brew again? I'm not going to be able to do one this week. I don't know if they're doing one tomorrow. I can't. I'm working and stuff like that. So at this stage, there are no plans for any collabs right now. Maybe in the future and stuff like that. But I'm really struggling to find time, to try and set up. It's just work is very sort of fluid at the moment. So I sometimes work in the evenings or on the days, stuff like that. So it's quite difficult for me to be able to commit to a, next week Thursday evening type thing, because I don't even know when I'm working next week. Quite says we have to be thankful for the Lions for actually coming down. They could have easily pulled out, like we know who refused to come over for the cricket, 100%. And Cheston says this weekend will be a much better game than the ones before. There's just so much on the line. Springboks with momentum. I feel it'll be theirs or ours to lose. The series win is far more important than the way the game is played. History will tell in the end Springboks to win the series. Peter Stewart, very, very good point. In fact, I was reading a very, very good Twitter thread. And I'll try and dig it up and talk about it, because I think that they nailed the entire tour and the entire sort of situation bang on the head. Tian van den Berg says, very excited for the next week versus Argentina, hoping for Fassi and Herschel to start. Yeah, we moved straight into the Rugby Championship. The British people going on about that FAF tackle, but I see this is a big hit. I must admit, when I saw it during the game, I didn't think much of it. I didn't really understand why there was such a big commotion. I think it looked pretty, shoulder to sort of where the ball area was and around here. I don't think it was to the head. Good evening, Grant Swartz. And I'll be the Safa says, I'm just worried about Moster on the flank. He doesn't offer the same the P-step the Toy does. I mean, yeah, he's a different player, but I don't think we'll miss P-step to Toy, but I don't think we're going to be sitting there thinking that, look, Franco Moster's not going to let us down, put it that way. I don't think. I think that Lewitt brings a bit of the bulk that P-step the Toy would have had. So I think that we've got players who complement each other quite nicely. But yeah, so I'm going to start with the Australian situation, and we'll talk about that a little bit. We'll talk about we can talk about the Sharks owner, the fact that he come out and said that he's got Rassie Erasmus covered if he ever needs legal help and stuff like that. So we can talk about that. But in terms of, and I think there was also apparently something about Eddie Jones and coaching, so I'll go and look at that as well. But so looking at the Australian issue, here it is. So 3 players have been dropped from the Australian side for this weekend. Not that they've actually named it. But apparently there was quite a big... So basically what happened is the 3 players are... and of course they have to go with some of the hardest names to pronounce. But it's Marika Korobeti, who's sort of the big name. And then Pona Farmasli and Izzy Nazarani. Now those 3 were... apparently there's a team gathering at the Auckland Hotel last weekend. And then they took booze back to their room and apparently drank the night away, basically. And then, yeah, so that didn't go down very well with the Australian senior players, your hoopers and the likes of that, because I think that in many ways, after the sort of Michael Checker era, there's been quite a bit of a resource structuring in many ways in that Australian side in terms of the way they behave as opposed to the way they play necessarily. And Coach Dave Rennie's been talking about a change in culture, and I think they do need a change in culture in Australia. There's been such an up and down sort of time for Australian rugby, really. With the Israel Folau incident, with the Rolling Castles, the ex-CEO. there's been a lot of issues with Rugby Australia. They had the whole payments issue with the players and stuff like that. So there's been a lot of issues, and they've been trying to sort of build quite a sort of team to a future, but quite a nice and positive team environment. So Rennie said, and I want to quote him here, if you sweep the sort of thing under the carpet, it bites you in the backside later. He said, everyone has a clear understanding, regardless of your standing in the team. There's an expectation of behavior, and these 3 guys didn't reach that. We have a big squad here of 42 players, and 59 understood the importance of getting together and connecting and having a quiet beer. 3 guys lacked the discipline required beyond that. There was no issues around behavior or damage or any complaints, but we'd finished downstairs. The expectation was to call it a night. These 3 boys went upstairs and carried on. We stated the importance of our preparation for the All Blacks. We all need to be at our very best. This didn't fit with that mindset. He says, I'm incredibly disappointed, and a big chunk of our group is pretty angry. So that's why we have made the decision. So yeah, those 3 players, and I mean, to not have Koroibete against New Zealand is a huge call. I think he's actually a former Australian Player of the Year. So it's pretty ballsy by Rennie to sort of make that sort of big decision, but I think it's the right call. I think you've got to, if you've got an idea and you want to start instilling that kind of culture is important. And it's, look, I mean, Australian sports teams have never been the most straight shooter, if I'm going to be very honest. There's always been quite a lot of stuff surrounding it. I mean, we're talking about referees, we talk about the abuse that Michael Cheika used to throw at referees, at journalists, at everybody. If you're looking at the Australian cricket team, you don't have to look particularly far to think about some bad moments in their history. So it's nice that they're trying to clean their act up, and this is quite a nice sort of hard line to draw quite early. But going back to the comments, so that's the situation there. So if you're wondering why Koroibete will not be running out on Saturday morning, where we will be live, Lukhanyo will be taking you through the first game of the Bledisloe Cup. I'm quite excited to watch that. I unfortunately am working all day on Saturday, so I can't be doing the game, but Lukhanyo will have you sorted. So Tia van Berg says he's not worried about Mostert at flank at all. He's been one of the best box best players in 2021. I 100% agree. I think in many ways he could even be could he be a sharper man of the series? I think he could be. I think if you look at some of the best performers across the first 2 tests, he's just so consistent at the moment. Very, very under the radar type of player. But I mean, he could be a bit of an outside shout. The legal thing was funny. Yeah, we'll talk about that now. Jason says, what effect will these players' absence have on the game against the All Blacks? Well, I think at the end of the day, one man's loss is another man's gain. So other players will have an advantage. And look, what you've got to try and do, if you get the advantage, is say to somebody like Koroibete, listen, you might be, one of the best players we have, but if you're going to stuff around and you get pissed, I'm going to come in and I'm going to make that jersey my own. So I'm hoping that, I'd like them to make sure there's a reaction. I never really like Australia winning. I'm not a massive Australian sports fan. It's mostly to do with the rivalry with South Africa. I mean, we've got a massive rivalry with cricket, pretty big rivalry in rugby, not as big as the All Blacks, but, we've always had quite a big rivalry with the Australians. But I'd like them to be competitive. The last thing we just need to see is New Zealand just walking over them. The Elton Sharpshooter says, why do these discipline problems always happen with the Aussies? I remember Beale was also involved quite a while ago. Yeah, Beale, Quade Cooper, Gitto had a few issues. Always had sort of very problematic players. James O'Connor's, I remember being 18 on a Friday night, being out at a local club here, and all the Reds players were there. Or 3 or 4 Reds players were there. And it was like 2, 3 in the morning, and James O'Connor was there. I don't think he was drinking that much. But still, I mean, how can you be at a club at 3 in the morning, the night before you're about to play? I think they're playing the Bulls the next day. Contender says, if we had a Southern Hemisphere team, the pack would be Inyakani at 1 now, he's a loose head. Takeo at 2, Malherbe at 3, Whitelock, Mostert 4, 5, Khaleesi, Matera, Savia. Yeah, interesting. Look, I'd actually have to think about that a bit more if I wanted to sort of comment on what I think mine would be. But I'll be the Safa says this culture is prevalent in Aussie Rugby League as well, but far worse in league. Maybe just an Aussie thing. I think to a certain degree it is. Cheslin says, don't think it's going to change much. Aussies look like a good club team. Yeah, I mean, the fact that they struggled so much against France was bizarre. When you think of the French team that they sent over, no Intermac, no Dupont, missing so many. Most of the players that were sort of playing in the Six Nations were, a lot of them. I mean, it was all the players that were involved in the top 14 final that weren't involved in that tour. And the fact that Australia struggled so much against them was just bizarre. So yeah, a bit of a strange one. And the fact, I think, very much in a bit of a building phase of Australia, but I reckon we can see. Yeah, I've just seen that we've had an issue with the other video. I'm not quite sure what's gone on there. I've just gone and deleted it. So apologies about the other one. I'm not quite sure why that was happening, what was going on there. So I've just sorted that out, hopefully. So where was I? Skylar says, don't think it's going to change much. Aussies look like, yeah, we just went through that one now. Can we talk about the All Blacks keeping Frizzell in their team even after he bashes misses? I mean, if you guys watch Good Rugby, which I'm sure you do, he had a big go at them in this video today. And it's just, but New Zealand, and it's something I never really realized until the last couple of years, but the fact that they do have such a big issue with domestic abuse, I never realized was such a big thing across the island. And the fact that so many New Zealand players are involved in this crap. And I think, for New Zealand, who sort of often sort of hold themselves in such high esteem and stuff like that, as always having such a strong moral compass, the fact that these players are still playing is disgusting. I'm sorry, if bloody who's our best player at the moment? Lukhanyo, if it surfaces that Lukhanyo was involved in domestic abuse where he beat up a woman, I would never want to see him play for Springboks again. How can you ever sort of send that sort of message if you just keep brushing these things under the table? It's ridiculous. I mean, and the fact that World Rugby is more concerned about what Rassie Erasmus is saying about referees than going to New Zealand and saying, how can you allow people who are being charged with domestic abuse and found guilty of domestic abuse, how can you be allowing them to play? It beggars belief. I mean, it's ridiculous that things like doping and going after the referee and stuff like that. I'm not saying that you can. I'm not going to say that you need to. We should ever condone doping and stuff like that, but I mean, these are criminal charges. You don't go to jail for doing steroids or taking forms for hunting drugs. You don't go to jail for going after a referee, but you can literally be locked up for domestic abuse and stuff like that. And the fact that there are a couple of cases in the current New Zealand squad, and yet nothing really sort of seems to happen about it. So we could talk about that, and I think that I'm interested to see what other people sort of have to say about it. But so this was an article that was released today, I think it was, and there was talk about the fact that the allegations in Shannon Frizzell's case won't be released. So he appeared in court last week on 2 charges of assaulting a woman and 1 of common assault, stemming from a late night incident in central Dunedin. Apparently, the female. This is just reading the New Zealand Herald, so I'm trying to give you guys some context. He said the female's victim's mother told the Otago Daily Times her daughter had first been slapped, then punched by the rugby player following a verbal dispute in the octagon. The man put fear into my girl, and that's been the worst thing to see, she said. The course was adjourned for the 15-test loose forward to undertake police diversion, a series of prescribed tasks, which, if completed successfully, will result in the charges against him being withdrawn and no convictions entered. The scheme requires a defendant to admit responsibility. In outside court last week, Frizzell apologized for his behavior and said he had to put a plan in place with counselors. I'm so sick of that sort of crap, of the whole thing of no, we need to rehab them. Shame. It's not their fault. He didn't know better, and we'll send him to counseling and we'll show him how it's wrong. That's bullshit. It is absolute bullshit. You want to go punch a woman? Cheers, that's your rugby career down the drain. Rip up your contract. As I said, New Zealand should be ripping up the contract. You cannot stick behind players like this. The fact. I mean, I think that Israel Folau, a lot of people won't agree with this, but I think that Rugby Australia were quite right with their handling of Israel Folau. The fact that they eventually did say, "Cheers, you've contributed your contract. You can't do that." And in many ways, this is a lot worse. I said you don't go to jail for. I mean, it can be construed as hate speech. What Israel Folau was talking about, but this is a far worse sort of case, and it just gets brushed under the carpet. And it was about 3 years ago now, I think it was the Xavier Reese one, where he apparently was dragging her to the ground and pulling her around the street stuff like when they had an argument, and that she had bruises on her head and stuff like that, and her face. And then it was a case of, oh well, shame, he was drunk and he needs to go to rehab and sort out his drinking habits. I never understand that this whole sort of, oh well, we'll just rehab them. It's absolute nonsense. None of them should be. Same as Blummy Pablo Matera and all the racism incidents that people then dig up in Twitter. And a lot of people sort of then say that, oh, but they were young. They were young for me is okay, they were 11 or 12 years old, 13, 14 at a push. But I think it was, I mean, the Australian bowler, his name, I mean, the English bowler, his name has just completely left my mind. Was putting out those sort of racist tweets in when he was 20 and 21 years old. Now, I was 20, 21 years old 4 years ago. I knew at that stage that you can't be saying this sort of things. So, I think retrospective punishment is an awkward one, but I'm very bored of the excuses that always manage to sort of pull up. There's a drinking problem and we'll solve the drinking problem. A shame. He just didn't understand, so we need to counsel him. Oh, he's going to undergo an extended program. Like Matera is going to go and I'll be sat down and told, Pablo, what you're saying is very nasty and you can't say these things. It's racist and it hurts people. It's really, really. I think we need to start having sort of stricter things. But we're far more worried about Rassie Erasmus putting on our video about officiating. So Contender was saying earlier, let's address the Fazal incident, the third incident of its type after Jerome Kano, Sevi Reese for the All Blacks. Who got charged with domestic abuse? So yeah, it's Shannon Fazal. Contender reckons sack Beaumont and bring Pishar. I 100% agree. I was so upset when that voting came in, because I think you had one person who pretty much wanted to continue the status quo. And keep these things going and keep things the way they were, and somebody else who said that we need to bring the tier 2 nations to the fore. We've got to make sure that our big nations are touring to the smaller sides. We've got to bring USA in, we've got to bring Canada in, we've got to get Tonga and Samoa and Fiji. We've got to get these guys top sides, and he lost the blooming election based on that. So Alpha Sharpshooter says, imagine we hear that Lewis had punched and slapped his wife. Cheers, mate. That's your thing gone. I'll be the sad to say, I stay in New Zealand. The judicial system is a joke. They pride themselves on having low prison population, but it's because their sentencing is so sharp. It's a very good point, actually. I'm not going to pretend I know much about the judicial system, but I have heard the sort of thing of, oh, well, there's not a lot of people in prison. But as you're saying, it's because they just don't send them there. Rena Opman says, like sending a murder to rehab. Well, it's very extreme version, but it is kind of being like, oh, well, shame. He didn't realize that you can't just go and stab somebody. So we're going to send him to some counseling. We're going to send him to a nice program. And we're going to tell him, listen, you can't take this knife and go and stab people. That's wrong. You've got to. Imagine the statement, Sevi Reese, one of the biggest players in the world. Boom, domestic abuse, Crusaders, cheers, you're gone. New Zealand, cheers, you're gone. Go play league. Go take somewhere else. We don't want your kind here. That's the sort of statement that we need to make. And they're just too scared to say it. Potato says rugby's version of R. Kelly stories. Grant Swartz, I'm sure I heard somewhere that when New Zealand was knocked out of the 07 World Cup, domestic abuse spiked in their country. It could very well be very true. We should have a man of the series, man of the match, most defining moments, such for the series awards. In short, the Despair says Forever Sports Lions Tour Awards Show. Well, that's interesting. Well, should we put that up to? I probably kind of know where we're going to go, but we'll put that up to a poll, shall we? I'm going to end the poll on whether whoever's going to win, and I'm going to say. When I can do, we can run a poll. Should we do so? Maybe on Sunday night or on Monday or Tuesday next week, we'll do a Lions Tour Awards, and we'll try and cook up some awards. Yeah, I think that'll be quite interesting. You can go, as I said, I think some nice issue suggestions there from Chimbamba Wheeler, who was saying most defining moment. So we can do man of the match. We could do man of the series. We could do try of the series. There's only been a couple. Moment of the series, forward of the series, backline of the series, comment of the series. You can do quite a few things actually. Yeah. Well, let me check your suggestions in the comments. What sort of awards can we do about for the series and stuff like that? Not a fan of cancel culture. Yeah, look, cancel culture in theory is no, but the problem is I think that it becomes a bit of a trigger word. I'm not going to go too much into it, but I think that cancel culture has become quite a broad sort of term, and if you have to really break it down, I think there's as with most things, you have a concept, it then sort of gets blown up to people where think it means this and that, and the reality is something in the middle is usually where we lie. But as LB the Safa says, let's get back to the rugby law. Yeah, I just think that I just would love to see somebody come in with a proper hardline stance and say, piss off, you're going to be involved in that. Cheers. A period Gianti takes some performance enhancers to try, is guilty of taking performance enhancers to try and get back from a long-term injury for the World Cup. Cheers. 4 years. Boom. Cheers. Shannon Fazal goes and punches a woman, and he's going to play against the Springboks in a couple of weeks. Where is the justice? What are your thoughts on having Mornay and Willemse on the bench? I think it's nice kicking opportunity in Mornay staying. I think it shows you that we reckon it's going to be quite tight. We can do a rep of the series. Third game will be like Wales versus SA game. Yeah, I reckon it would be quite close. Got nomination from the moment of the series for Khaleesi's try-saving tackle. Let's not talk about the abuse nonsense. Let's celebrate great rugby players like Amon Pimpin, Khaleesi, and world rugby legends like the Beast and Pocock. Yeah, I just think it's sad that these people who drag the sport through the dirt just get no sort of consequences. Tackle of the series, Amon Daly, agreed. Man of the series equals the water boy. Christian Katsia says, very nervous about the Lions game. I just have the feeling that we may slip up. And Grant Herholt says, Squidge records that Amon Daly may be the top center pairing in the world. That's big kudos. I think somebody else said that as well. Said it was too early to talk about the fact that they're the best center pairing in the world. Now, I'm gonna be very honest and say I can't say that I watch every single other center pairing in the world in international rugby, but I cannot think of a center pairing that is currently better, especially one where one complements each other so much. You know, the fact that you've got the you've got the brute force and the sort of go forward and direct and on the ball skills or over the ball at breakdown work of Damien Delindi, and then you've got the intelligence, the speed, and the reading of Lekanya and we've seen some of his defensive contributions. We've seen his contributions on the attack, lesser so to a certain degree, but he's got such good vision as Lekanya. I think that he is one of the if not the best outside center in the world. Or I prefer to use the word probably most informed. I think to be the best in the world means that if everyone is playing their best, you are the best of the rest. I think the most informed is probably a little bit different to being the best in the world. But that's getting a little bit complicated. So the Ultimate Sharpshooter says, was Gatlin the right coach for the Lions? Like, seriously, thinking about it, Six Nations was one of the most free-flowing competitions, yet Gatlin seems to impose his conservative style on them. I think Gatlin is the right coach. I think that he is. Lots of people accuse him of having the Welsh bias, but I think that you would have that with if you had Eddie Jones, you'd have a lot of English players in there. If Gregor Townsend was the head coach, he'd have more Scottish players in there. So I think that he has been the right call. I think he's very, very good at bringing people with quite different sort of styles, stuff like that into it. I think apparently he's very, very good at balancing the whole sort of the different nations, stuff like that. And I think he's a world-class coach who cops a lot of criticism because it's such a difficult thing being a successful coach. I mean, this is a guy who's won the Six Nations, who's brilliant for Wales, brilliant. I mean, imagine Wales are going to be in the World Cup final. But so I think he's very, very underrated, and people sort of talk about his Chiefs time and stuff like that. But I think he is definitely the right coach for the Lions. I'm very interested to see who they go with next. I would love to see, and maybe a Gregor Townsend if you want to see a really exciting Lions side. Contender says best commentator of the series, Matt Pierce was TVP. Back me. Could we see Dwayne and Waterboy? Yeah, I'm very interested to see what we do with our refreshments this weekend to see because Dwayne has often run that. We saw that during the World Cup. Jacques Nienaber was pitch side as a physio, so he was down there as a medic. But we've seen players running water for quite a while. We saw Luat Diago do it. I think it was in Argentina. We've seen Dwayne Vermeulen do it. Alton Yankees pretty much ran it when he wasn't playing at the World Cup. So it's always been people who are quite important in the squad that do run the job. People who can not only relay the message but can understand what they're sort of looking to do and stuff like that and can get the message across. Ultimate Sharpshooter says, I would say and David Dillon are the best defensive pair. I still think France and New Zealand centers have more X factor on attack. Not saying and David Dillon are bad on attack, just the other two are better. I think it's a fair shout. I'm very keen to see when we play against the All Blacks, that's how you get to test yourselves, really. Damien and Kanya are simply sublime. Would have been so great to see them teach Conrad and Mar a lesson. I mean, Conrad Smith and Nonu or even we saw Nonu and Sonny Williams. I mean, New Zealand have always had class centers. Kwasi says, where have you gone? No other coach has given South Africa more problems in the last 7 years, but Gatlin, true story. Dwayne will definitely run the water. I tend to agree. Will play the year nomination as of current. Depends. Are we only going internationals, or are we bringing in club form as well? I think, international-wise, we have pretty much only really seen sort of Six Nations. So you're going to kind of go with, your Hamish Watsons, your Anton DuPonts. But DuPont didn't get to play that in the mid-year series, which is a bit of an issue. The New Zealand and Australians have only played sort of 3-4 matches, so it's difficult to say about that. I don't know. We'll get there when we get there. I think it's now that we're going to have a decent international series after the Rugby Championship, we can then go say, right, who are the best players in the Rugby Championship? Who are the best players in Six Nations? And then we can look at those players during the end of the year tour, and then we can sort of start moving towards a World Player of the Year. I think that Anton DuPont probably has to be up there. I think he's one of my favorite rugby players at the moment. He's just, he's so exciting. He's such a cool player to watch. BDB Kevin says, pretty sure Jean Rivera's geography already taught them a lesson. Yeah, look, this is the thing. We were talking about the fact that and Damien Delindy are the best centre combination in our history, and crisis to have Jean de Villiers and Jacques Fourie to compare to, and the fact that we making those comparisons show you how lucky we are to have those two in the setup at the moment. Cheston says, there's just so much I think that both these teams and or individuals can take from this tour, so much controversy on and off field, and for Springboks, the future of the squad is a bit of a focus. I just think it's been a really, really interesting tour, and I think that there's a lot of memories that we've made and a lot of things that we can remember. And I think the fact that we've been able to, without being in the stadiums and without being in the pubs and meeting each other, we've been able to sort of connect, not just me, but lots of different YouTube channels, lots of, I see the Springboks doing a Springbok live show, the fact that we've had these interactions from Russie on Twitter and we've seen videos come out, I don't think it could have been possible for us to have been closer to a tour that we physically cannot get close to. We're talking about a game that, that's somebody in the UK, or in Grant Swart's case, Bahrain, I literally can't get closer to the game than they can, really. I mean, geographically, I can go and sit outside the stadium, but I can't go and see it live. And yet we still feel so close to the action. We feel so a part of the tour because it has been so much online and so much on social media and stuff like that. So it's been really, really cool. Daniel Tureen says, we need to see more of the Rugby Championship Player of the Year. Agreed. So Alto Charles Shoes back in my DuPont. Kutena says, Sentence New Zealand is not consistent as well as in England or Australia. Sentence in South Africa is very consistent, either Damien Delindy or most often, or Damien Delindy and Creel 2015, or even Steyn and 2019 versus Namibia or Creel. Fan of the series, Jaco Johan, 100%. What do you do for a living? Tell us about you. I'm a sports journalist by trade. That's what I do, really. So I'm a freelancer. So I work for couple of different companies and stuff like that. Here and there, I've written for a couple of people. And look, maybe one day this becomes a career. It's very much not a career yet. It's very much a bit of a very time-consuming hobby, but that's what I do with my life. I'm a freelance sports journalist. It's probably what I put on my CV. DuPont is the best scrum half in the world, all class. Agreed. Forward player of the series in Yakane or Mostert or Khaleesi. Back of the series, Amo Demilinde or even Mapimpi. Jesse Creel done in terms of him ever starting. I think he's got a very, very very, very hard task of trying to get back into the side because these two are undroppable. But I think that we'll probably see him against Argentina. That's what my gut says. Christian Katsia says, a few months ago, we weren't even sure there would be a tour. Very grateful. Agreed. Colby will shine in the last 10. I hope so. Do you think if the boys win the series? I'm assuming you mean, do you think the boys can win the series? Or I'm not sure if you have something to add for that. But I think we can win this weekend. I don't think there's any reason we can't, except the reason I sort of, and the title of the video was on the verge of greatness, is that this is one of the biggest things, isn't it? To win a Lions Tour is a once in a career thing to do. To win a World Cup, especially as a Springbok, where you only do it every 12 years, is a once in a career thing. So to be able to do back to back, and I think that this would be bigger than any other Lions Tour, and not just because we're playing down bigger in the number 10, but because it is a case of every single thing that possibly could have gone wrong for the Springboks ahead of this tour probably did go wrong. No Dwayne Vermeulen. No PSTF the toy of this weekend. No World Player of the Year. No. We had half our squad isolating during the tour. We haven't had any tests. The only test we played before the first test was against Georgia. So no international rugby for the players based locally. Half our team was quarantining. Our staff was quarantining. I mean, Jacques Nienaber, our head coach, was busy doing online coaching. We've had pretty much every sort of possible speed bump we could. So, and I also think, and I'm a little bit biased because it's because this is sort of more my generation, but I think this is one of the best Lions squads we've seen in a long time. Maybe not necessarily in terms of the best 15 players on the field, but in terms of the quality of depth around there. I mean, let's talk about the players that we have not seen, that we're not going to see in the Test series. Ian Henderson is not going to get a Test cap. Hamish Watson, the Six Nations player of the series, got 20 minutes in this series. So who else? There was another one who was nominated. I was talking about this in the group, and the fact that if you look at the Six Nations, the nominees for Six Nations player of the season this year was Talapa Falatau, Robbie Henshaw, Louis Rees-Zammit, Hamish Watson, and Ty Byrne, and yet we're only going to see Robbie Henshaw this weekend in the 23. So this is what I'm saying, that the fact that, and a lot of people will say it's bad selection, but we've seen some incredibly big names miss out, and which shows you how good this Lions squad is. And even Gatlin said he's never struggled so much to pick a team because there's so much quality in the squad. So winning this series, I think, would be one of the greatest achievements in Springbok history. I genuinely do. And if this squad could go to 2023 and win a World Cup again, this would be the best Springbok squad of all time. You can't argue that. I mean, imagine getting 2 World Cups and a Lions series. Tell you who couldn't do that, New Zealand. Tell you what, we can do that, us, if we win on Saturday. If we win on Saturday, suddenly you could be going to the 2023 with every right of trying to write yourselves into history as the best squad of all time. One of the best squads of all time. Imagine that sort of concept. Because also, we're not going to lose too many people in the next World Cup. So I know we're getting very much ahead of ourselves, but I think that's kind of how important this Saturday could be. So Alma PE says, I'm worried about our bench. I can't see how our backs can add anything. Lions bench looks stronger, more physical, whereas Franny Steyn or De Preer, we are an injury away from a second row disaster. Look, we've rolled the dice, but we've been rolling the dice since 2019. I mean, we rolled the dice the entire Rugby World Cup with if Polo gets injured, what do we do? You know, if they're Franny Steyn and stuff like that. So, look, I think Willemse is a nice player off the bench. I think Herschel Yankee's a nice player off the bench. I think Morné Steyn brings composure and BMT. So I don't think we're looking for a world sort of turnaround, chase 20, 25 points in the last 20 minutes off the bench. We've picked a bench to try and see out a game and try and maybe win it at the end with a drop goal, with a 3-pointer and stuff like that. The bench requires our starting 15 to get through to 50 minutes, I feel. If we get an early injury, then I'll start to worry. If we're seeing Kwaka Smith on at 20 minutes because Franco Moss has had to leave the field and Lord Diago then has to play a full 80, we don't know if he can do that and stuff like that. That's where the issues become. So my big worry this weekend is Lord Diago, whether he can get through his 55, 60 minutes. It's one of those things. If it all goes well, I think it's a good move. But if it does badly, you will sit there thinking, should we have gone with a Dan de Preer? Should we have gone with the Rand Ulstad? British and Irish Lions tour, great prep for Rugby Championship. Look, I think this is a bigger deal, but yeah. Containers a potential new high super sports TV versus Skinny Brew versus Carrot versus the Rugby Guru. Yeah, I can't say I've had too many calls for Super Sport. Cheston says, also just a huge shout out for the appreciation to you, Stephen, for this opportunity to give us to sharpen our knowledge. And yeah, just thanks, mate. No, well, dude, to be honest, it's not even you guys to sharpen our knowledge. It's all of us. I learn so much from what you guys bring in here. You guys remind me of players who I sometimes might not be thinking about. It's bringing different views, bringing different concepts and stuff like that. At the end of the day, we're kind of all sitting at home, going through Twitter, and Twitter's a horrible place at the moment. Goodness me. But it's these things which I enjoy the most, where we can all get together. And it's like being around a very, very, very large pub table, which we could have beer now, given the fact that the prohibition has been lifted once again in the country. But it's been fantastic to get this, to have this space. Grant Swartz reckons the best last year in the series was Lions versus Sigma Lions. Stephen losing his shit was entertaining. Mate, when Vincent scored that try, that was it. And then Sibiso Sanguini not getting there was pretty heartbreaking. Good times. I think we might do a wrap-up video talking about some of the best moments. Jake says, do you think that with Kubas at 9, Kubas at 9, we speed the game up, not on purpose, just because he wants to play fast? I'll be very interested to see how much he can move away from his natural game and have to play the kicking game. And BPD Kevin says, I don't think this game is going to be as close as the bookies analysts have it. The Springboks with Randolph have the makings of upsetting the analysis and producing a running rugby clinic this week. Quite says, George the prop. As long as Kubas doesn't run away from support, good point. If the Springboks win the rugby championship this year, they will be the best of the pro era. Will be the only SB team to win back-to-back rugby. Yeah, true. And there's also the rugby champions as well. So, if you could go rugby championship back-to-back, World Cup, Lions series, and that's just ticking all the boxes, isn't it? I think staying is there as a finisher, banking on Box having a lead with 15 to 20 minutes to go, or needing to make a big kick to win 100%. The Dupree brothers made too many mistakes and was not consistent. Look, I think Jean-Luc had a chance to try and sort of prove his thing and didn't play particularly well. Rusty on the internet, Jacko Johan, and undercooked Iago makes Alstad look like a child. Yeah, it is. I must admit, I've yet to be really sort of blown away by Renard Alstad. So I'm not upset that he's not there. It's nothing against the guy. I haven't been wild yet. I haven't seen that game where I sit there going, that's why he's there. That's why we're backing him. I would much rather see a Pepsi Buthelezi, Elric Lowe, a Vincent Tutuka, one of those sort of players in a spot at the end of the year tour. As Quite says, please do smash the like button. As I said, it's our last live stream talking about this game until the weekend, when we'll be live for the game itself. We will be live for Lions versus Griquas. I'm not going to be live because I don't want to watch the Lions lose again to the Griquas. No, but it'll be Lacanio on Friday afternoon, and then we might be live for Sharks versus the Bulls on Friday night. We'll see. And then we'll be live on Saturday morning for New Zealand versus Australia, and then I'll be with you guys for Saturday night. I'm trying to organize a few things for the pre-show. We'll see if I can try and pull them off. And after that, it's been a hell of a ride, and we're gonna be done with the Lions series. So could be quite an emotional stream on Sunday night. We're thinking about the fact that when we started this channel, it was all about the Lions series. And now we're not going to have the Lions series. Obviously, we roll straight into the Rugby Championship, but it will be quite weird not to have that thing we've been sort of so fixated on. We have 3 Congolese players here in SA, the Chitukas of Adosh Tambwe. The Chitukas are both currently trying to get their paperwork sorted. I don't know what Adosh Tambwe's status is. I don't know if he's applied, if he's got what his story is there. Pupsy says, greetings from Wales. Would like to say you only know how good the Boks are when the All Blacks want rule changes, so they're pretty bloody good right now. Think you're losing to the Boks. And HBMMRGG, I don't know how I'm supposed to say that, says, methinks the Lions are dangerous, potential banana skin in the same sense like the Boks were underrated in the run-up of the World Cup final. Quas says he thinks that Van Staden will be important this weekend. Van Staden played 7 minutes and his stats are looking crazy. Just imagine if he had played 20 minutes. Yeah, I think that him and Kwaka are very important off the bench. And I think that, again, I rewatched some of the clips that of the game, and I really don't understand where the Kwaka Smith hate comes from. I mean, I know it's because he's small, but he does so many small things which other players like literally just cannot do. And yet people are just so quick to throw him away. And I think I said this at the beginning of the tour. If South African rugby fans, if the South African rugby women, if South African women had the same sort of size complex that SA rugby fans have, we'd have a lot of single males in this country, because it is unbelievable how, as soon as a player isn't 7 foot and 75 stone, they can't be in the Springbok setup. But yeah, so I think Van Staden, Smith, Malcolm Marx, Vincent Koch, Trevor Nyakani, those guys over the ball in those last 20 minutes are going to be playing a big role. And that's why I reckon the big thing for us is, can we get our starting 15 to that 50-minute or that 55-minute mark? It's can we push them for that long? Because if we can, we've got the players to make an impact. Maybe not a bomb squad impact, but they can make an impact. It's whether they're still was still in the fight, or whether we're in the lead and stuff like that. Kevin says it was the same with Colby. Size not have the impact people are thinking it does. 100%. Ulster is our worst Lucy ever. I can't believe he became a Bok. Katana says Church and SA should have prayers for Boks to win, praying for consuming fire to consume the Lions big time. And Kevin says, remember back in 2018 when people wanted to Colby to move to 9, proved them wrong very fast. Yeah, that was Nick Mallet who said he didn't see Colby having a career unless he shifted to number 9, and then he scored a try in the World Cup final on the wing. So even good old Nick Mallet had to bite his tongue a little bit and mince his words. Who do you think will win this test? I've got to back the boys. I've got to think the Springboks will be able to pull it through. I think it will be quite a. It's going to one of two ways. It's if I think the Springboks will pitch up. I think that a lot of people sort of are worried about did they produce their final performance in the semi-final like England did in 2019. And I always think that this whole England produced their final in 2019 is a little bit disrespectful to the Springboks, because I just think the Springboks pitched up in that final and changed things up and tactically outclassed England. I don't think it was necessarily a case of England playing that badly, but I think that they had a couple of early injuries in the front row, and I think that we flipped the script, and I think it was a tactical masterclass. From sending out the scrum halves early to go and practice box kicking and then not really doing that. I think to sort of always say that England produced their final performance in the semi-final is maybe not necessarily giving the Springboks the respect they deserve in terms of how well they played that final. Grant Smart says Quokka cleaning out 3 Lions players in the lead up to Mapimpi's trial is exceptional. That's one of my favorite clips of the week. When I didn't really pick it up when we first watched it, but you're looking at it now, and it wasn't just like, it was Courtney Laws, it was Harris, I think, and I think it was Ellerman Jones. So it wasn't like it was small players either, and just boom, cheers, Oaks. Who do you think will do the best in the URC? That is my next thing, to be honest. Like, obviously the Rugby Champ is exciting, but after this, I'm all in on the URC. It's such a cool competition from the looks of it. It's got a really cool brand. It's been marketed really well. I'm really, really excited about that. Teams to watch are your Leinsters, your Bulls, Munster. I think Sharks will be quite good. Look, I think Benetton, as much as they won the Rainbow Cup, the fact that they've just lost Paolo Gabizzi is probably quite a big blow. Very interested to sort of see how they plug that gap. He's gone to Montpellier, which I don't really understand with Andre Pollard there. But each their own. But we're going to really get into the URC in September in the build-up. Got some big plans, hopefully, for that. Do you... on a different note, what are your thoughts of Heineken Meyer? Do you think he would have a similar team? Well, in terms of the Springboks at the moment, no, I don't. I don't think Heineken Meyer would back Colby. I'm not entirely convinced he would back even Faf de Klerk, for example, or somebody like that. I think you have quite a few different players. Cheston says Quokka has a huge engine and his work rate should, and for most people, are the best for the size and position he's played in. I think he's just very, very different. And, South Africa are quite one-dimensional in many ways. Then that a loose forward or any forward is just supposed to just pile on, physicality and brute force. And he's somebody that's very different. And I think that a lot of people sort of saying that Jasper Wiese played a lot better. I think he did to a certain degree. But if you watch, once again, I was saying, go watch Squid Rugby. He's the master at all this. We were so much better at helping our players under the high ball than when we sort of just if you watch the highlights of Quokka Smith the other weekend, he was like by himself all the time under the high ball with Duane van der Merwe just having a field day. So it was good that we sort of learned from that. What happened to the guy Beast dominated in the final? Dan Cole. I actually don't know. No, who started in the final for England? And now you're having me second guessing myself. It was Marlowe off the bench. It was It was so long ago, wasn't it? To be fair, I wasn't very sober during that final. When Mapimpi scored the try, I was on the floor of the Rat and Parrot in Grahamstown. Good times. Good times. There we go. Yeah, so starting props was Sinclair and Vinipola. I don't know where Dan Cole is. I think he was quite old, wasn't he? He's 34. Apparently still at the Leicester Tigers. Yeah, so that's where he's in and around. No idea what his story or how he's playing at the moment. Because yeah, it was obviously Marley came on because I think it was Cole came on in the 3rd minute and then Marley had to come on in the 46th. Yeah, as Grant Swart, Sink to start in the last 3 minutes, and then Cole got his head shoved back in his backside. People forget how many Bok coaches didn't pick Rafe Moon? He should have double the caps he has. I know the fact that he only got 50 caps is unbelievable. Mark Monroe, the Boks are already the first side ever to win the Rugby Championship in the same year as the Rugby World Cup. Boks going to run, reckons. Strues Bob. Jerry Rowan says, although Firmino has been an Easter at 8 and served the Boks immaculately, there must be new introductions with the upcoming tournaments coming up. But that's what we did last night. We talked about it last night. And they got told I was clickbaiting and creating stories out of nothing. But I think it's a valid point. Pollard finally coming back to Cape Town. Stormers could do with a decent 10. That's not Tim Sweel. We got to get Pollard back to the Stormers. We've got to get Faf and Franco Mostert back to the Lions. We've got to get Colby to the Lions. We've got to get who else? We've got to get Damon Delindi to the Lions. We've got to get Faf. That's it. Faf to Clerk. We've got to get who's on the bench. We've got to get Vince Cock to the Lions as well. Yeah, we just need to get everybody back to the Lions, and then we'll move them to the URC. That's what I reckon. Billy Ruiz from Western Province, I think, will be a similar player to Dwayne or Evan Ruiz, and will be someone we need to look for the future. Grant Swaz, is this true or just a rumor? Yeah, I think it's very much a rumor. I mean, he's earning, as Kwasi said, he earns 1.6 million a year. Can the Stormers afford him? I think Damien Willemse, there was that whole article on Damien Willemse, the fact that he earns, I think he's earning 5 million rand in the next 3 years or something like that. And there's a big article about that. It was Mark O'Hain. Shock and horror that there was a controversy in terms of an article and he was there. But yes, bring all the staffers to Sharks. You mean the Lions. Pollard is by far the best number 10 in the world. We are privileged. Look, I mean, Richie Mwanga might have a bit of thing to say about that. You know, maybe you could say Pollard is the best, but I wouldn't say he's better than Richie by miles. Also, the Remain Intermac is a class player. I'd like to see Dan de Preer get some game time in the Rugby Championship. Well, he's back in the squad, so yeah, I'm interested to sort of see that. Damien is from Middleton, but his mom lives around the corner from me. So what you're saying is you're going to organize a young interview with Damien. You can have a sit down and have a chat. I'll tell you what. Do yourself a favor. Tomorrow morning, Trayvon Yakane's press conference is coming out. It's been embargoed for tomorrow. It is brilliant. He is. I've got like names on like my best or players I most want to have on the Forever Sports podcast that I most want to sit down and have a chat with. But I'm talking like an hour and a half sort of chat, a proper podcast type setup in person. And Trayvon Yakane is very, very high on that list. I think he's one of the most entertaining guys in the game, and he's just brilliant. Does Huison play in the Rugby Championship? Not for me. I think he goes in the end of year tour. I think that he needs to prove he can stay fit. I think he's played 3 games and he's looking very good, but I wouldn't be bringing him up for next weekend, for example. That's when the Rugby Championship starts. So for Huison, I would say you got to play a full Curry Cup, mate. You then go to play some URC, and we'll take you on the end of the year tour. You stick with Pollard, you stick with Yankees, you can stick with Mornay if you need to. It's only for the next month, or Damien. But I think with Huison, I just think it's so harsh to, and he's not playing brilliant rugby, but it's so harsh to Cohen Bosch, who's been playing pretty well for 2 years, to then get completely leapfrogged by someone who's playing their 3rd game at fly half since 2018. So I think that's where my frustration comes with Huison. And again, he's barely played this last year. He's played 370. He had played 360 minutes before that SAA game. He could have played in 32 matches for Montpellier. They had the season, 32 matches. He played 6. So he's got to prove he can stay fit. is my biggest thing. And if he can, and he continues to play like him, then fantastic. You add him to the squad, and Bob's your uncle. But he's got a long way to go for me to prove fitness. Reno Hoffman says, Pollard back to the Bulls. Imagine 10 Steyn, 12 Pollard, 13 Goosen. Well, old Jake wanted to Willemse as well. Yeah, that would have been pretty mental. Surely there are some good foreign players we can put in our team to supplement our Springboks leaving for Rugby Championship. Are you talking about... You're talking about local sides? Because, I mean, to be fair, the Currie Cup finishes at the beginning of September, so there's not that much left. And then in the URC, it doesn't really overlap. So the URC only runs in the non-test windows, which means that we will never lose we never lose players to the Boks during the URC. Goosen and Morne swap. I think eventually, that is the one change you sort of see. Imagine a squad versus Uruguay. Backline is Reinach, Steyn, Vasco Speckman, Pollard, Goosen, Fassi, Leroux. I'm assuming you mean Argentina, unless we're going to pop off to South America next week. But Reinach, Steyn, Speckman, Pollard. I think if you're going to put Pollard at 12, put Yankees at 10. I don't really see the point in a Steyn-Pollard combination. If you're going to put Pollard at 12, it's fine. But I think then, why not play Alton Yankees and let those two have a field day? I think Morne Steyn is quite similar in Pollard in terms of very much kicking game. Doesn't have the same physicality, doesn't have the same all-around game. But if you're going to put Pollard at 12, then I'd love to see him and Yankees reignite that partnership that won us the game back in Wellington. Kieran Bosch needs so much development before he could play 10 for the Boks. He does. I think he needs a new club, to be honest. I think he needs to move somewhere else and get some experience. Can't see Kieran Bosch having the stones. We need at fly half. Bob Hugh. Look, what I will say about Kieran Bosch is that he was playing some fantastic rugby last year in the Super Rugby. He was playing some fantastic rugby in the Super Rugby Unlocked in Currie Cup. So do I think he'll ever be a starting fly for the Springboks? No, I don't. Do I think he'll ever probably be a reserve? Maybe not. But I just think that it's just harsh in terms of the precedent you set, that you can be playing well week in, week out, go through a bad patch of form for 2 or 3 months. Another guy can jump in, play a couple of games at fly half, and suddenly he's on the tour. And because fly half is such a big position that you sort of would tend to do that. But it's a little bit like if Marcel Coetzee had missed the entire last season and had played 300 minutes and then comes back, plays 2 games, and you say, cool, we're going to replace him, And even him, he's been part of the Springboks more recently. I don't think you've got to reward people who have been putting in the effort for longer and been on form for longer. And that's just personal me. If you want to throw that out and go with stuff like that, then yeah. Bob Hu, the Zimbob. No, not quite. Bosch is more of a 15 for me anyway. Well, he's starting 15 this weekend. I think he'll be quite good at 15. We saw his little cameo Saturday last week, and he did look a lot better. I thought the live was Thursday. No, Mir Khalifa. I'm working tomorrow night, so it's today. And then we live again on Friday afternoon and Saturday. Sig Lions need to bring in some real talent. Do you have any suggestions who could be signed? I do, actually. I'll show you who the Sigma Lions need to sign. Yeah, those players. All of them. Any of them. Every one of them. Everyone. They need, if I'm looking at the Sigma Lions, I think the only players who start in a world-class URC side in the current Sigma Lions right now are maybe 4 or 5, like a Vince Tuka, Carly Sardi, maybe a Franco Horn, Rubs, Wanda Similani. That's pretty much it. I'm going to do a whole video dedicated to the Sigma Lions. I've actually had someone who's been chatting to me on Facebook talking about that, the whole down from the Lions and what needs to happen. And so I will probably next week or the week after, we've got a bit more time, try and do a proper video sort of dissecting where it's gone wrong for the Lions, what they need to do to get themselves out of the rut, and if they can. Patrick says, I'm so happy for Kobus. He's just an unbelievable player with speed, power, and big engine. I can't wait. Ultimate Sharpshooter says, Kobelard and Hendricks are looking very promising. Can't wait to see them on the park for the Boks. When you go to the top level, all the players have talent, some a lot less than Bosch, but it's the cop that makes the difference. 100% agree. We talked about that yesterday, that there are some very, very talented players. Not all of them have the ability to take their game to the next level. Sigma Lions need a proper class scrum half. Yeah, I don't see why they don't go after I'd love to see them bring Jaden Henderson to Lions and unite the Hendrickses there. The Lions should have kept Tyron Green. I wish. How much worse do you think Van Staden and Visser are compared to the main men? 25% worse, more. Who's up and coming beyond that should be in the team in those positions? Quite a lot, actually. In terms of getting a number 6 into the squad, it's probably. I mean, you can go Master Coetzee, I suppose. Nama Clubber, if he gets a decent run, it's quite an exciting player. Dylan Richardson, if he decides he's going to settle at number 6. In terms of, but I think, in terms of flanks, when you get into the box setup, there's lots. There's Pepsi Buthelezi, I think, is almost ready. There's Evan Ruiz, who's almost ready for a call-up. There's Albert Lowe. There's Vincent Tutuko, I think, has been fantastic for the past 2 years. I think it's quite a few loose forwards you could easily be chucked into that squad. Fred Zalinger for Box, never going to happen. Yeah, listen. Kwasi says, I have a debate with a friend of mine. Which province do you think produces the best players in South Africa? That's a very interesting one. Probably the Western Cape, because they've got so many schools. I mean, Gray, Bloem have produced the most Springboks, but the Western Cape just churn out between all the different polls and stuff like that. They just churn our players on down there. I mean, Gauteng, we're between Monument and Affies and the likes also turn out. And it's quite interesting. We should almost do like a state of origin where we can look at the current box setup and look where they all come from. And Kevin says, imagine how many of these players would currently been at the Stormers if they had their money issues sorted. So many of these rugby players started for them in junior seniors. Yeah, that's why I say I reckon that Western Province probably produced a lot of talent. The Eastern Cape also produced a disgustingly good amount of rugby talent. In terms of just the most players that come out, Eastern Cape is also incredible. They just don't have administrators who know what they're doing to run the damn thing. So Neil Garner says Box 17, original Irish Lions 19, third test prediction, nice and close. Eastern Cape and KZN, but I'm biased. Visa is also elite. How many current Bulls players yet to have a Springbok call-up could push for a future call-up? Current ones. Who's there? Albert Lowe will definitely be a Springbok one day. The two props are quite rated, old Snenekamp and Smith. I'm yet to be blown away by them. I think Ruan Nokia will probably be up there eventually. I think the Creels are very talented. I probably saw those are the obvious ones. Nobody wants to live in Joburg. Sorry, Stephen. Bit hectic. Nothing wrong with Joburg. Especially now it's getting a little bit warmer. Western Province win the Craven Week almost every single year. Man, Renach Faf is such a crucial part of our team. Hopefully, he does a good game as a game he can ever have. Yeah, I think we're going to miss Faf on the defense the most because he's very, very good on the defense. Neil Garner says Stellenbosch forever. Logan Robertson, we're going to start finishing up here. I'm over an hour, so I'm going to start finishing up, maybe go watch a movie or something and take my mind off things and just sort of de-rugby size a little bit. So he's just been so at the moment. So dear Springboks, you are loved. Kobaka, go and just relax, cherish every moment. 100% agree. Then you get KC, 2 Box, Jack Slater, and Speckman. Yeah, Kingswood College it's for a pretty small co-ed school. They do produce some good sportsmen. Grant Hatting is another one. Not a Springbok, but a good player. The Bulls' depth is mad. They got 6 quality props: Trevor Lees or Steenkamp, Smith, Van Rooyen, Mantanzima. I really like Mantanzima, and I'm very, very biased because his scrummaging, you'll get there. But hey, whenever I see at 23, I think now. Whenever you see a young Lucy with a bit of a goose step, you gotta get excited about the chap. Mia Cleve says go Gray. Hendricks says also really talented 9. Schoolboy Rugby vibe was the best. Just kidding, I lived there for years. Yes, definitely, guys. Eastern Cape and the Western Cape are the rugby hubs of SA. Who do you think will win, Bulls or Sharks? I'm going with the Bulls. The Sharks were pretty poor last weekend and got beaten by a 13-man Greek was times 2. They were down to 13 men on 2 occasions and still lost. So for me, it's only going to be the Bulls this weekend, unless the Sharks really sort of step things up. They've also got no Jaden Hendricks, which doesn't help. But yeah, I'm going to pretty much end it there. As I said, maybe go watch a movie or something. Whole night ahead of me. Anyway, so last sort of comments, my addiction is 28-25 to Box. Let's do 2009 again. Ruan Nokia, a like for Franco Mostert. Yeah, very similar type of player. And just nothing particularly flashy, but just hard work week in, week out. So yeah, just as we end, give me your score predictions as we sort of close out the line strength and depth will be a factor with fresh players chomping at the bit to play. Yeah, I mean, Bundy Aki, Josh Adams, Liam Williams. I think those players are going to be very, very important this weekend in terms of trying to sort of make a bit of a statement. Kevin's going box 35-12. Thanks for the stream. I thank you guys. But Joe, in closing, please do smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. Come and hang out with Lacanyo on Friday. We are also going to be launching our Premier League show in the next day or two, which is going to be quite cool. I don't know how many of you guys are football fans, but we are Forever Sports as opposed to just Forever Rugby. And I've been trying to sort of get back to watching a bit of football and stuff like that. Obviously, it's been so sort of driven by the Lions tour, but we will be launching our Premier League show. We're going to be doing a weekly show. It won't really be like this. It'll be more sort of panelists. We're going to get fans from around the country and stuff like that to jump on. And we're going to be chatting footy once a week, which should be quite exciting. So keep an eye out for that. We're going to be launching that in the next day or two. Try and sort of spread our rise a little bit. Obviously, when the Cricket World Cup starts, we'll also be looking at that. But yeah, so it should be quite cool. John Reynal says box 15, 6 2007 World Cup score. Hank Pretorius is going for a draw. I'd hate that. Pupsy's in box 26, Lions 15. 30-20 box to win, says Cheslin. Patrick is agreeing with Kevin. Grant Swartz is going 27-15 to the box. And Jiva says, excellent live stream. Thank you. No, thank you guys very much. Please do keep safe. Smash like on the video. Subscribe if you're new as we chase down 5,000 subscribers. I can't believe I'm actually saying that. We hit 4,000 yesterday, which was amazing. We're already almost up to 4,200. So we are chasing 5,000. So yeah, if you've got any friends who haven't subscribed, go and invite them to the channel. And I'll see you guys in the comments on Friday. I might not be live, but when the Kanyo's on there, I'll definitely be jumping in the comments and having a bit of a chat. Until then, keep well and see you guys soon.